Grand Rising, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the Just Energy Summit and one of our closing out sessions with the Politricks of voter suppression. You know, I would be remiss if we did not acknowledge the current climate and what is going on. This is the 2020 Just Energy Summit, and we focus on environmental issues, energy burdens that are impacting and that are not racially equitable in the American South. We advance policies to try to ensure prosperity for all. Now, if we're talking about energy and we're dealing with this pandemic, some feel it's a plandemic. However you look at it, people are being impacted, and we as Black people in America are being impacted the most. You know, it's not about coming off as a victim. It is about being real and understanding that the system of oppression was specifically designed for Blacks in the United States of America. There's no dancing around that. Regrettably, we are the subject matter experts of that system. And we're dealing with COVID-19 in the midst of a presidential election. We wake up this morning that the current administration, current President Trump has tested positive for COVID. Sadly, we're in a situation where we have to think about that. Is this some strategy? Does he really have COVID? I mean, and that's sad. I mean, we just have to be real about that information, you know, and we shouldn't have to be that way. But then you have this other side of it where you're like, ancestors come through, play with it. That's karma. Oh, you didn't want to wear your mask. Oh, you thought it was a joke. People are dying. You said it was false. It was fake news. And we just have to be real about that and what we're feeling. We need to take a moment and soak that in. We need to you know, acknowledge our ancestors, those who came before us, and it's a lot, y'all, you know. And so we're going to talk about the politricks of voter suppression, the politricks of voter suppression, and understand that all of these things combined bring about the trickery in the politricks of voter suppression. So I have some great people here with me today. Valerie Rouse of the Black and Green Agenda. I have Don Blagrove of Emancipate NC, North Carolina. And I have our brother, Kamal Franklin of Community Movement Builders. So I'd like for you all to just give us a briefing about yourself and tell me what you're feeling in this moment. Valerie, I'll lead with you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. The Politricks of Suppression. So I'm Valerie Hill-Rawls. I am the director of the New Georgia Project Black and Green Agenda, which is a new campaign focusing on environmental impacts, the negative environmental impacts in the rural Black belt of Georgia. This campaign is only 9 months old, so I have a new baby that I'm holding. So you all be gentle with me while I'm being gentle with my new baby. How am I feeling? Heavy. It's really been hard to articulate in words really the things that we're experiencing right now because they're so foreign to all of us. We are losing people in our eco-memory, if you will. These deaths that have occurred aren't just people that have left us. These are the storytellers. These are the ones who have kept the flame bright and gave us direction and hope and sustained us through all of this. So I'm feeling really heavy. I'm not going to candy coat it. I'm not happy. I'm going to defer to my brothers and my sisters so you all can share who you all are, and we'll come back about how I feel and what the Politricks of Suppression looks like as we liberate one another. So thank you, my dear sister, for having us, and thank you for your moderation and our time.
Thank you all. Thank you. Brother Kamal, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. I mean, and I think part of the reason I'm feeling okay or good is because I don't have much expectation out of the American electoral system. I never have. I've done my background quickly as an organizer and activist. I've been a practicing attorney in New York, done civil rights work, particularly against stop and frisk and police brutality. And my experience in the electoral realm has been as a campaign manager for Chokwe Lumumba Sr., who eventually became, or was his first campaign manager, who eventually became the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, then later passed away in office. I also was the NAACP Civic Engagement Director for a time period in Mississippi, and I worked in Georgia as the Deputy Director of Pro Georgia and doing work on redistricting. So I think, opening is, I think, voter suppression obviously has been around for a long time and particularly targeted towards the Black community. So that part is nothing new. I think the part that is a little, not necessarily new, but it's a sort of a regeneration of the savagery of white supremacy in its rawness. I think that part is something that this generation, including myself, has probably not experienced in the way that we're experiencing now, but that our past generations are very, very familiar with. And so in that sense, I think the idea of the discrediting of the vote in terms of the idea that mail-in voting is going to be questioned, the idea that the whole election will be questioned, and that there will be a possible stealing and or taking of the election. Again, this is not the first time in American history that this type of contemplation or actions have taken place, but for us it's new. And so this is not just around voter suppression. This is around the, what I would say is the overt failing of the American democratic system to honor its creed and or its words, and in practice to continue to be the oppressive force that it's been to Black folks in particular, and in general to a working class public. And then lastly, I'd just say that I don't want to phrase this as a Republicans versus Democrats issue per se. I think there's certain things obviously the Republicans do that are barefaced in terms of winning and taking elections. But I think the Democrats have blood on their hands. When I say blood, I mean Black blood on their hands. Democrats, even in this realm, even in this time period, have taken the Black vote for advantage and not delivered on anything for Black people. And I mean Black Democrats as well as white Democrats. We have a system that works in this two-party system that works in cahoots with each other. It takes the Black vote for getting us to vote, but without providing us with anything in return. And so I think it's upon us as a community to stay vigilant when it comes to talking about the American democratic process and how that includes the two-party system, and it's basically taking advantage, let's say, of the Black vote, and what we must do, not only during electoral times, but post-electoral times, to make sure that we create systems that are outside this American process that look after us as a people, that we cannot depend on Republicans or Democrats to do what's in the best interest of our community. If we only rely on a voting strategy, we have lost already. And so I think that that's very important for us to keep in mind as we talk about the seriousness of voter suppression, that we also talk about the seriousness of white supremacy and how that system continues to oppress our people, and what our people must do during this time period to protect ourselves, which goes way past voter protection. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. Dawn?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I'm very proud to be here with this distinguished panel of guests. I am Attorney Dawn Blagrove. I'm the Executive Director of Emancipate NC out of North Carolina. As we talk about the Politricks of voter suppression, I think it is safe to say that here in North Carolina, I sit at ground zero with patient zero as far as what it looks like for the electoral process to be hijacked, gerrymandered, redlined into systemically and intentionally and deliberately diluting the power of the Black vote. That is what we have seen here in North Carolina for the last decade. We have spent millions of dollars as a state in litigation, fighting some of the most racist gerrymandered political districts I think that we've seen in decades. So I speak from that position because I live in North Carolina and it is real. And one of the things that I think when we're talking about the politricks of voter suppression is that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is real right now. This suppression is real. The opposition is mounting up unabashedly. They aren't even using dog whistles anymore. They are recruiting armies of folks to stop you, to intimidate you at the polls. Make no mistake. We are at a time, we are at a time where voting is crucial. Now, is it the only tool in the toolbox? No, of course not. Not at all. But it is an important tool in the toolbox. And you know how we know it's important? Is because they're fighting so hard to keep you from doing it. That's how you know it's important. We have got to be smart and think about what is in our best interest, because nobody else will. And I'll leave it there until later on.
And Dawn, that leads to a discussion I have often. Our political development is key, and you know, we have to stop beating one another up about it, because we've only been involved in the game 57 years. But for us to only be there 57 years, we have a lot of information. Like we need to get into strategizing. You see, and so you hit it dead on the head when you said that it's a tool in the toolkit, in the toolbox. It's not the only one, you see, and there are steps to it. We have to have Black-centered special interest groups in the political realm. We need Black-centered lobbyists. Going back to, you know, Brother Kamal, I just want to ask this of all of you, just the distrust of the electoral process. Okay, we've seen it. How do you work past the distrust of it and still get involved with the political process? Because we have to acknowledge that we're losing a lot of voters. You know, I don't like it. I almost think it's derogatory when we, you know, say it facetiously, you know, the hoteps are the too woke, because you can't be too woke. And hotep is a greeting like learn the history on things, you know, and that didn't come from, that narrative was not created by anyone that was pro-Black or traditional Black family centered, okay? And so I'll just leave that there. So we need to kind of watch repeating that. However, we're acknowledging that there is a rightful need to consider everything being rigged, stolen, just the mistrust of the electoral process. We're acknowledging that. But how do we work through that? Because again, it's a mistrust, because there are times that the electoral process has worked and we cannot deny that, okay? So how do we speak to our our brothers and sisters that are registered to vote, and they're just simply not voting because of the mistrust, because that is a way that we're suppressing one another with the division. So how, I'm sure there's some, speak to them, and I'll lead with you, Valerie.
Well, I want to circle back to a couple things that my dear sister and brother have said, if you allow me to. The New Georgia Project has registered so many voters in the state in Fulton County. Overall, for the state of Georgia, 500,000, but for Fulton County, 75,000 have been registered. But I have in my hand, and Dawn, you know what this looked like, being the legal eagle that you are. We just filed a lawsuit on Monday morning. 14,000 registered voters who are getting purged and didn't even know that was going to happen. So before we can start trying to convince people about why you should, we have to bring hard data to let them know. There would have been 14,000 people through this list maintenance strategy that Georgia uses that would have been taken off the roll, showed up to vote. So the distrust and mistrust comes when you behind the scenes using broken policy to keep me from participating in the process, and I don't even know it. I'll use myself, I was suppressed. I started getting these letters about no one was registered to vote in my address. I've been a registered voter in the state of Georgia for 12 years. But this particular election, all of these letters started showing up. The first one I ignored it because I'm registered. Second one, I was like, wait a minute, this is getting a little funky. So then I find myself going online. Do you know they took my address, the unit number of my condo, off of the documentation that looked like no one lived here that was registered to vote? So why did that happen? I live in a zip code. I've never lived in a zip code that determined my life expectancy, the rate of my insurance, all of those variables that they use to deny access. So I, at this stage of my life, have never been suppressed, taken off of a line until the voter roll, until I moved into a zip code that is targeted, that is disenfranchised on so many levels. So when you talk about the trust and the mistrust of systems, when you live in a space and places that these systems have suppressed multiple phases of your life, when it's time to get down to the democratic process and policy, who has time for that conversation when you're dealing with the day-to-day issues of suppression? So I think in order for us to continue to combat the false narratives, if you will, about our role and come out, I love the fact that you just put it out there. The blood is on hands on all of those who believe that the policies that they put in place are just specifically designed for their own constituents who don't look like us. So I think to lift up the trust factor, and a lot of people like to say, well, you know, that's historical, how our family members and our ancestors participate. It's like, no, we need to tell the whole story and make it relevant to sharing with those who have this mistrust. It's like, look, what you're not going to do is disregard the lives that have been lost, the work that has been done, because you're allowing the systems that are in place at the moment, to my dear sister's point, to continue to invest in demoralizing us. Instead of us taking those dollars and getting engaged in the political process. There's a question right now about how do we engage people in electoral participation in the rural Black Belt, which is my focused area. And in order to do that and get engaged with the electoral boards, people have to be present, they have to be engaged, they have to be informed, and they have to be empowered. This isn't hard to do. What has happened is some of us who've gotten into this game, and I'm not calling names and places and spaces, but we too have participated in the suppression. So let's just be real clear. So when we got brothers and sisters who are running for these seats, they sell a bill of goods, they show up on Sunday, they tell us what they're going to do, and as soon as they get in that seat, they flip the script because they too want to have their little cake and eat it too, while they disregard the constituents who put them there.
Oh, honey, please.
And that's us suppressing.
That's internal suppression of the democracy and the participation. So we need to start calling our folks out and make them become more accountable for the roles and the responsibilities that they play on our behalf.
And if I could just jump in, right? So the other thing that I think is critical to this is, number one, we cannot, one of the things I think that we do sometimes as a community, or I think it's just human nature, is pat ourselves on the back. Those of us who have access to information, who understand the way these systems work, pat ourselves on the back for knowing, and then judge others for not knowing. Let us be clear. It is part and parcel of white supremacy and of systemic and institutional oppression to obfuscate the rules, right? Many people don't know how the systems work because the systems aren't designed for disenfranchised people to understand how the systems work. If you know how the system works, there is power in knowledge. One of the things that my organization does is goes around to the communities and explains and does a training and an educational series about the roles of elected officials, the powers that they have. My organization is focused primarily on criminal justice issues. So we have a whole training session where we talk about, what does the district attorney do? Who is the district attorney? What powers do they have to control the way your criminal justice system looks? What powers do they have to control equity? What powers do they have to control or transform this broken and rotten system? Who are your elected officials? Who are your judges? So when you talk about and understanding the system, listen, everybody in my house and anybody who's ever seen me on a panel, I don't think I've ever been on one where I did not talk about the importance of reading The Spook Who Sat by the Door. Those of us who are inside of the system, who are invested, who have all of the credentials, the paperwork, the education that the white man gave us, what we need to do is use that knowledge, use that education to learn this system. Because you cannot blow up a system if you don't understand where its weaknesses are. And you can't understand where the weaknesses are unless you get inside that joker, learn it and feel it and know it. And the problem is, so many of us get inside and get confused, lose our way, forget that our loyalties are to one another and not to this system and not to the God of wealth and not to the God of advancement. So we have got to, how do we fight that fear? We fight that fear with education, right? We fight that fear with dispelling misinformation and strategically putting in places our own plans to make sure that the system is fair and that we can hold the system accountable. That is how we fight disinformation.
Yes, and I want to just add on, you know, a lot of us know the information, you know, and we have to trust one another. Everybody's not going to be wrapped up in the pretty bow. You know, we have to just keep it real. In most states, you only need a high school diploma or a GED to run for public office. And sometimes you're going to have people that may not fit the narrative that can get involved. And once we give them the information and the training, then we have to implement it. We can't stay in education mode forever. We've been in education mode, especially in the nonprofit realm, for a very long time as far as funding, you know, and at some point it has to move into an action mode. Okay, so and that just goes back to, I want to go back to the portion of the question that Valerie answered, as far as holding our how do we hold our local boards accountable? Okay, by getting involved. Voting is not just that a wand and it's just going to take everything away. You got to get involved. You got to stop being lazy. Get off of Facebook. I'm talking to the people. Get off of Facebook with the rah-rah, the armchair activism, and doing your checks and balances like, oh, well, all you all are doing is marching, or all you all are doing is voting, and it's not going to do anything. It was only 57 years ago, so kill that noise that voting does nothing. It was only 57 years, so stop that, okay? Now, and get involved, because if you're not voting and you feel that you don't trust the system and that you feel that, yes, there are too many politicians and not enough legislators, okay? There are too many politicians and not enough legislators. You're not changing any policies, because that's the only way that you're going to get things done, okay? So getting involved, going back to that question, going to the local board of elections, like everybody's focusing, you know, a lot of times on the state office, but it is your local office, your local board of elections that you can hold accountable, and you do that by going down there. If you just go down to your local board of elections, okay, just go down there, and that will make them tighten up. I know about that area, okay? So when you have an election, that's when you're most busy, okay? So going to the meetings, letting them know, raising questions, shoot, asking to be appointed on the boards. Like, we have to get involved politically on a local level. There are a lot of appointments. You can be on planning and zoning committees. You can be on all types of things, and you can have a say. I just wanted to reel that back in on election night, back to that question, because it is a great question. The ballots are going to get mailed in. You want to make sure that things are getting counted. Go down there. You can go and view the tabulation. You can go and view it. It's open to the public. Send a couple of people down there. So let me go to Kamal, because I know he wanted to speak on that. So he has something to say. So passing it off.
Just very quickly, I mean, I just wanted to add from my own perspective is that I never get upset with people who tell me that they don't trust the system, because I think those folks are absolutely on point to not trust the system. A lot of times I feel like, you know, folks who are, again, working class, poor in our neighborhood, they've already understood the system better than us as folks who have these degrees, because they know that the system doesn't, even when there are other folks in office who look like them, it doesn't change their day-to-day lives. And so they don't feel like that impact that it should have, that it really has. And so therefore, why am I going to take away from a second job or having some fun even to participate in something that does not excite me because of the choices that are had? I'm completely honest. Joe Biden, you know, the reason that people will come out against Trump is because of Trump. It's not going to be because of Joe Biden, right? If you continue to put up people who don't excite my community, who don't speak for the issues of concerns of my community, who downplay the things that we need in order to bring over white moderates to their side, right? If that's the choices that you're giving us, then I don't expect there to be a high turnout of black folks. I expect Biden to get the majority of the black vote, just like Hillary Clinton got the majority of the black vote, right? But the turnout is not going to be exciting, right? And I want to quickly, you know, I have to touch on Obama. Obviously, Obama set precedents for numbers because of the opportunity and the representation that he gave us in terms of being a black person in a high place. But let's not act as if the policy realm that Obama put in place was some overt pro-black policies. Remember, Black Lives Matter, you know, for whatever I think of it as an organization, but the idea of it started under Obama, right? It was Obama who helped pass and signed a Blue Lives Matter law, right? It is Obama who on foreign policy continued drone warfare and AFRICON, the extension of it in terms of drone warfare in Africa. Obama was scared to talk about black issues, right? So let's, again, not suggest that just because Democrats win that our problems get solved. And I think that's the issue that we have in terms of getting the black community excited about the alternative to overt white supremacists. Having an undercover or old school white supremacist or racist doesn't necessarily solve the problem of a society which is overtly racist. And people know that. They know that instinctually, and they know that through their work and their lives that they have lived in America. They know it from the story, somebody like me, from my mother who grew up in Jim Crow South, right? Jim Crow, South Carolina, right? So we know that these things are going to be there. And until I think the thing that I really agree with until we start to find ways that we create the policies and the ideas that speak to our Black community, and we force these elected officials to act to say whether or not they support these ideas. And I don't care what party they're in, right? And if they don't support those ideas, then there's no reason for them to get our support. I don't mind us sitting out elections, to be honest, if it's a part of a bigger strategy around what moves us forward, right? Someone just can't get my vote because they are the alternative to something that's overtly bad, when I know when you get in, your language may be sweeter, but you're still not handing out that pie back to my community. So I think those are the things that we also have to think about when we talk about the distrust of the system, is that what do we do that's different than just telling people to vote, particularly as a community of smart folks, engaged folks who have organizations. What do we do that's different that can inspire and or bring together sort of a larger, it doesn't necessarily have to be a third party at first, anything like that, but it could be a political club or platform that says, this is what we as a Black community demand, and we need to hold these other folks accountable and say, will you sign on to this pledge of this is the things that the Black community need, right? And if they can't sign on to it, then they can continue to get a lackluster result in terms of what they should expect us in terms of pushing people to come out to vote for them.
So, and I think if I could just piggyback on that, because it's so important, right? The work that we do, the work that Emancipate NC does for a very long time was very much like, we know, I'm a Black-led organization, I'm a Black woman, I know what Black people need, right? We don't. You don't know. We don't know. We are not a monolith. What we have been doing over the last 3 years is centering ourselves in the lived experience of the Black folks that we are trying to uplift, and then crafting policies around their lived experiences. The people who are directly impacted, if they are not involved in drafting the policies, if they do not have a sense of ownership in what those policies look like and getting those policies implemented, then that is not sustainable, right? You cannot sustain a real change if it is not driven and guided by the people who are most directly impacted, right? So I think it is so important that we not, with all of our fancy degrees, think that we know what is best. You don't know. And it is a humbling experience for those of us who call ourselves, you know, the Dan Freemans of our communities, to have a conversation with someone who is directly impacted, who is like, girl, what you talking about? I can't file no grievance because I got to go. I want to file a grievance against the police. I get you. I hear you. But the reality is, because the process is set up that I got to drive 45 minutes to file a damn grievance, I can't physically get there to do it. I can't start at the grievance process if my people don't have no way to get to the damn process. Excuse my language. And so often, if we don't center the voices and the needs of our people in our policies, in our strategy, we're lost. So there has to be, but again, those folks do not necessarily have the skill set to create that policy, to transform their words into the system words that we need to be able to use to get it implemented, right? So all of us play a role, and we have got to all acknowledge that there is no one that is more important or less important in this struggle of liberation for Black people. We all have a role, and everybody's role is important. And if you miss one step, if you leave anyone out, if we think that there are Black people who are of no value to our work, to our liberation, we already lost. That is a part that I think I want to uplift so much about this politricks, the politricks of suppression, right? It's because we allow folks to tell us, we allow outside entities to define for us what is right, what is wrong, what it should look like, what it looks like to protest correctly, what it looked like, how you gonna tell me how to protest correctly against a system that is so corrupt and divisive and rotten to its core? How can there be a right way to fight oppression? How can there be a right way to fight for my liberation? There is not. Right? And so that means that if there is not a right way to do it, then we use every tactic we have, every tool in the toolbox. Okay, I'm gonna stop now, y'all.
I want to jump in because I want to go back And we have to speak truth to power, and to going back, we're alienating some of our voters, okay? And down here in Fort Valley, we call it towns and the gowns, okay? And I'll just leave it at that, okay? So we have to speak the language. You know, we have to speak the language. I don't agree with them not knowing. We are the people that's being impacted. We're them. They're our friends. I see it. I'm that person. I don't know about you. I'm that person. Okay. So you cannot excite them by using pretty words. Okay. You know, disenfranchisement, even that. Okay. Like you have to speak their language, and we're alienating them. They are already registered to vote. Okay. They're already registered to vote. I get that, you know, Val, when you were like, you know, we can't focus on that right now. We need to focus on them because a lot of us are already registered to vote. If they're getting any type of government assistance in the state of Georgia, and I'm thinking that's the case in other states in the South, they're already registered to vote. When you go get your license, when you go get your state ID, it automatically registers you to vote in the state of Georgia. So we like to go into the churches, we like to go to the fraternities, the sororities, to everyone where we already know they're going to vote. And we like to, you know, pat ourselves on the back because we had a whole bunch of voter registration, but you're not getting anybody to the polls. You're not getting anybody to the polls. The people that don't trust it, acknowledge it with them, make them a part of it. Make them a part of it. And they have the ideas. That's what the strategy is. And we have to figure out a way, going back to, you know, Brother Kamal, you know, there are people, you know, just the not voting and protesting, like that thing has been a struggle for me. It has been a struggle for me. And how do we excite them for 2021, 2022? Or how do we get it communicated to them? Go on out here and vote this time.
Can I chime in around the lived experience and the work that I do specifically is targeting the rural Black Belt. I've got 26 Black Belt counties that I'll be looking to support. And to your point, my dear sister, allow their voices to be community-led, participatory process and engagement. I'm not helicoptering in because, first of all, that's disrespectful. You don't go to anybody's house and put your feet on their furniture. Let's just go there.
But you should have already been there. You should have already been there. If you haven't been there, if you have not been there by now, that's the problem. You should have already been there. And see, this is the messaging that is coming across. Like, we're looking at, like, they're not us. You understand? If you're not already connected in the community at this point in the game, then there's a disconnect, and it shouldn't be that way. We just got off the first Black man running. Like, we all felt Wakanda when we didn't even know what Wakanda was this time in 2008. Okay.
But I think
so just allow me a moment, and we're gonna get to not seize that. And we're in 2020. We should have already been in the community. That's understood, Val. We all from the South. We all from the South. This is a country. You can't come down and somebody's gonna say, "Who are you? Who are you? Who your mom and them?" So we got to kill that. So how do we get them involved? because they are very much involved. They have a voice and they are influencing, and people are clapping on to it. People are clapping on to it. So we have to figure out a way, you know, right now in this moment, because this is about strategy. This is about strategy. We have to give people something to walk away today to get people there, that are registered. You know, we got to do this. You got to drag them. You got to go in there. You should already be there. And so I'm just going to leave it. It should already be there. Okay.
I want to piggyback on the comment that you made about language.
Yes.
So there's a language that isn't our language because of the lack of cultural competency that those try to employ there and put their language into our mouths. We've been speaking about environmental injustice from the day we got bought here in chains. Recycling, repurpose, reuse. Y'all know that can of grease to set on your mama's stove. So it's not about being involved. We have been and are involved. We have to recognize that as well and stop saying we're not. So I take issue with, so for example, let's talk about the black belt and that comment about going to the electoral board officials and holding them accountable. Well, the accountability still lies within us as a people. I believe in what my brother said, the blood is on the hands of even us. And we have to have some real conversations about the roles and the responsibilities that we played to get us to this place. This just did not happen externally. It has also happened internally. And until we start having some serious, honest, open discussions about how we participated in the lack of participation, that's the conversation that needs to be had. And to your point, Dawn, we need to lift up and engage the voices of the lived experience, because those are the individuals who've been dealing with the day-to-day oppression all day, every day. As my brother said, if I'm dealing with my day-to-day ops, I'm not going to trust the system that's not giving me and my family what I need. And I don't care if you look like me or not. That has to be unpacked. So Kamal, I see you shaking your head, brother. Come on back with it, because I love the way that you bring your message to the people. So I see you shaking your head. Please.
No, I mean, I think we're at this moment. This election is important. There's no doubt about that, right? But I think the problem is that part of the problem is that we are captured people. We are captured in terms of the institutions that we have by the Democratic Party to believe that if we don't only vote the way they tell us to vote and act the way they tell us to act, right, then we are going to be subject to the more oppressive force of the Republicans. And that's the strategy that we are locked into, whether we like it or not. And until our institutions, our organizations, to begin to think long-term about how this voting mechanism can be a tactic/strategy that works in our interest, as opposed to buying into the rhetoric that every 4 years it's the most important election and or event of our lives. And if somehow we don't participate fully, we have let our people down, we have let this down, we have given ourselves over, so forth and so on. That is the rhetoric of other people who want to capture our vote without giving us a chance to say, this is the value of our vote. This is what we're demanding in order for us to go out into our community and work to get people to vote. This is what we need, right, in order to say to anybody in our community that this is why they should support candidate ABC. We need to even be developing, and this is not anything new, our own grassroots candidates that come, as you guys are saying, that come out of our communities, that come out of the lived experience, that are part of our organizational apparatuses, so that they are somehow more beholden to us than the standard Democratic Party. I usually have these conversations. I have to somehow don't mention Republicans because I just think they're fools, they're overt white supremacists. But people, I don't need to mention them because I'm not going over there. It's the Democratic Party that we have to work out what this relationship is and is not, right? Because they are the ones who have the resources, who decide where the resources go, and decide how dare we live in a situation where Joe Biden could be best friends and talk about all the work he's done with Strom Thurmond throughout his life, and that shows what a good politician he is. Could you imagine him ever saying that he's spoken to some black militant, right? Some pro-black militant, and that person is his best friend, right? He'd be cut off at the knees. But somehow in our electoral system, it's okay for him to work with an overt white supremacist to show that somehow he can deal with the system. That's not our system. That's an oppressive system.
Right.
So we need to figure out what our needs are, right? And when we figure out what our needs are, that's for me when we fully invest, or we know how we use this tactic as voting as a way to not only just to stop the most oppressive force from being on our neck, but to help us in a larger liberation struggle. So I think those are the things that I think we as a larger community, as organizations, as institutions, need to continue. I know we've heard people already doing it. I'm not saying to suggesting that we're not, but continue to do in a bigger way, a better way, because otherwise we are 4 years from now, I'm telling you, it's going to be the most important election we've ever had. And 4 years after that, it's going to be the most important election we've ever had. And we'll continue to be using that narrative as opposed to the narrative of what's liberation for our people.
And let me just be clear. Let me double down on two things. Number one, as a political scientist, right, a person who has 2 master's degrees in political science, let me be clear. The Republicans may not be espousing what I want them to espouse. They may policies that I know are designed to oppress my people, but objectively speaking, they are tight strategically. They have a plan, and they have executed that plan for decades. They have short-term strategic plans, they have long-term strategic plans, and that is how they are winning, and that is how they are beating us on every freaking level. Let me be clear. In North Carolina, and in the Democratic Party, listen, in North Carolina, there was a sister that was running for Senate against Tom Tillis, a Black woman, Erica Clark, not Erica Clark, Lord, I done made up a name. But Erica was running. She is a North Carolina senator who was running for state Senate. Cal Cunningham, who was now running against Tom Tillis because he beat Erica in the primary, was recruited by the Democratic Party in North Carolina to run against a Black woman. He initially ran for lieutenant governor, wasn't even interested in challenging that senatorial seat. The Democratic Party in North Carolina recruited him and then funded his campaign against Erica to stop a Black woman from being on the ballot and representing North Carolina in the Senate. The Democratic Party is the apparatus that we have, but make no mistake, it is not necessarily a friend to the Black people. And we have got to build our own political strategies. There is no way we should have allowed this to happen to Erica, right? Who came out and told us, look, y'all, this is what they doing to me. And we still did nothing. We have got to understand this game and have got to know that we are not beholden to anybody except ourselves and our own liberation. But more importantly, we have got to strategize. We have got to have a short game that is acute and a long game. We have got to know we cannot get caught flat-footed every time some old white woman sitting on the Supreme Court dies. That cannot be our reality, right? Because really, if we were strategic, we would have made sure that Ruth sat her behind down when Obama, in the beginning of Obama's term, so he would have had 8 years to get somebody on that court who was younger, who made more sense, who could represent us. We should have held Obama accountable to making sure that he put somebody on that bench that was a Thurgood Marshall, that was not, right, that's the closest we've gotten. It's true, it's a Thurgood Marshall, but somebody that's better, right? Somebody that's better, that's not as elitist, that is better, right? Somebody who believes in moving forward the issues of real Black people that are real, right? And I think I want to touch just a little bit on this idea that we are all the same. And let me be clear, y'all, We can say that if we want to, but that's garbage. We ain't all the same. I have a level of privilege that a lot of Black people don't have. That is just real talk.
Mhm.
And because of my level of privilege, I have a different lived experience than they have. Are we all being oppressed? Yes. But somewhere on the oppression spectrum, my life is different than my brothers and sisters who are struggling and working 2 damn jobs to pay their bills and deciding whether or not they're going to pay rent or bail their cousin out of jail. That experience is different. And until we speak to the experience of the none of us rise. We can't rise if we're not being informed by the folks who are suffering the most. So while we are all the same, we are all Black, we are all living under oppressive system. Make no mistake. Just because I'm Black does not mean that my experience is the same as someone else's. We, those of us who have the privilege of sitting on panels and having Zoom calls and having a platform to speak from, we have a privilege that is real. And if we don't acknowledge that we have a privilege and use our privilege to help those of us who don't have privilege, we're doing everybody a disservice. All right.
And that goes back to, why in the beginning about just, us feeling that some can be too woke. We've been talking about all of this stuff is already known. Malcolm was talking about this. Fannie Lou Hamer was talking about this. Like we have to, let's cut to the chase. We have to stop being scared, okay? We already know what we need to do. And we have to stop thinking when we get together, we have to step back outside of ourselves because everybody wants to lift what they want up. And if it's a legit lifting, if it's going to advance us, then that's fine. And we should have multi-strategies. It shouldn't be, oh no, we need to focus on this, and then we'll do this. No, we can focus on multiple things. And we already know what we need to do, so we need to stop being afraid. We are the table. It's no longer, a lot of times when we talk about, equity and, equality, if you go back to the civil rights movement, that's allow us to come in the room. We're naturalized citizens. We allow us to come in the room. That is equality. Equity is we in this mug, and this is what we want, and we give what we want, and you give a legit consequence. A legit consequence if there's no follow through. And you follow through on that consequence, and that can be a strategic consequence. That's what the boycott was. We have to go back to having our agenda and pushing that agenda forward. We can't afford, like Brother Kamal said, for the next 4 years, and it'll be, that is going to be a big election, regardless of who gets in out of the 2 selections. Okay, but we have our municipal elections next year. We have state elections in 2022. And so we have people, I think we need to go to the ones that have the distrust and groom them to run. But make no mistake about it, a lot of them are ready to run. So we have to get over this, oh, we gotta teach them. No, you don't. It's some things that they can teach us. It's some things that they can teach y'all. You gotta come together. We have to come together and get all of those voices in. But we back to it, we got to stop being afraid. We know what we need to do. And I like how Brother Kamal brought it in about, as far as the Republican Party is not an option. There are other ways that we can do this, but our voices need to, I don't even want to say our voices need to be heard because y'all hear us, okay? We need to change what we're listening to, and I'll go back to Sister Valerie because I know she has some things to say, and then we'll go to Brother Kamal. And I think oh Lord, y'all,
we're running out of time.
we only have what, 3 minutes?
Exactly. So
let's this will get uploaded up. I hope you all got something from this, from the Just Energy Summit. I know we're in a moment. We're in a moment with this pandemic. We're in a moment with rogue officers who are abusing their power. We know what needs to be changed. That's not anything we need to have a meeting on. Like, we don't need to have the big Black special interest meeting. We need to decide, someone to, as far as a spokesperson, but yeah, Valerie. We have about a minute, close out with a quick call to action, and then we'll go to Sister Dawn and Brother Kamal. We'll let you finish off and give your contact information, even though it's on the Just Energy website. But just give your contact information really quickly and out.
For me, the call to action is collaboration and holding folks accountable for the roles that they play in the process. It's just, we've got to start working together. We've got all these silos, and I think that if we can have an integrated approach to the work that we do, I would love to continue the conversation with Kamal and my dear sister Dawn, because
definitely
multiple stakeholders and multiple stakeholder engagement is going to move us forward. It can't be us, them, and I heard you use the word they, but this is a collective we. It's we, the people. And if we will come together and stop fighting the backbiting, you gave the example of the brother that was bought by the Democratic Party to fight another sister. We've got to work to stop that ourselves. And so for time being what it is, I'm Valerie Hill-Rawls. You can find me at Valerie at the newgeorgiaproject.org. I'm here, I'm available, and willing and able to work with my brother and sister on this call to continue this conversation and to lift as we climb.
Dawn?
Thank you so much for having me. This was a really important conversation. And I'm also so glad to be in community with you all and look forward to continuing our conversations, and not just conversations, but strategy building, strategy implementation, and making some real effective, substantive changes for our people towards liberation. So thank you.
Brother Kamal?
Thank you also, and I would love to work further with all of you on coming up with some ideas. I think Dawn hit a key point for me, which was the strategy of sitting down and figuring out what our road is. And I just want to leave with the idea of there are a couple of elected officials that I have complete respect for, that I think serve the interests of the Black community. One is Charles Barron, who is still in office. And the other is a signal of what voter suppression looks like outside of what we classically think of voter suppression. And I'm talking about Cynthia McKinney. Cynthia McKinney was a Black congresswoman from Georgia.
Yes, Lord.
Who continued to run and continued to talk about the issues of Black liberation, both domestically and foreign policy-wise, who was a Democrat. And it was the Democrats who thought she was too radical, too Black, too much talking about liberation, too much talking about U.S. hegemony and the other parts of the world, right? And she talked about Israel. You can't do that. It was that made the Democratic Party put up challenges to her, put up resources against her to defeat her in a primary election. That to me is voter suppression, because that is saying that when you make a choice that we don't like, we're going to decide to course correct for you as a people. Right? Nowhere should the Democratic Party have that much power in our community to tell us who our spokespeople should be and to course correct for us as a people, when we know we have people fighting for our liberation who won that office fair and square. So for me, an ending note is that we got to get back to the politics of Black liberation, back to the strategies and tactics that are part of our history, and start to come out with how do we move forward as a people to make sure that our vote means something when we lay it out on the table. So thank you guys for having me.
And, again, thank you all for joining. We have an election around the corner, and if you're registered to vote, vote. If you are thinking about not voting, consider voting. If you're thinking about not voting, then consider being a poll watcher. Sister Dawn uplifted it, and I'm sorry, y'all know we're at 12, and I want to be equitable. If you can stay on, just 2 minutes. People that's joining the summit. The army of the poll watchers that will be at the precinct. So if you're not going to vote, then consider just providing a presence of support for your brothers and sisters that are going to vote, and making sure that they're safe and that they're okay. And consider being a poll watcher if you're not going to vote. And I hope that our call to action, the call to action is, there's no hope, that we will definitely partner, we will be open, and we will set up a short-term goal of 2022, that we're not in this position. If we can, 2021, that we're not in this position, that we have people running that are Black-centered, that are pro-Black, not co-Black, pro-Black, not co-Black, okay? And Black-centered and our special interests, because we deserve that. We deserve that. There's nothing wrong with us being lovingly selfish about what's needed legislatively, and for us to live as citizens and have liberation in this world and in the United States. So again, vote, take some people with you to the polls. You can assist some people. You have some people that are nervous about the digital divide. We had people we know the violence that was used just for us to register. So don't let COVID stop you if you can get out. Wear your mask, wear your gloves, spray down the machine. If you really, if you have an underlying health issue, do not endanger yourself. Do not, but don't let that be an excuse. If you can understand, if you can vote in person, there's no record of stuff everybody hollers that, because if it's not being delivered, then you can't prove anything. If you can vote, mail it in, follow up on your votes that you mail in, your absentee ballots. That's the call to action. Make sure that other people are voting. If you have to take them, if you need to assist them at the polls, you can. And love you all. Continue to be safe. And thank you for coming to the Just Energy Summit. I hope you all, again, got something out of this, walked away with something. Have some discussions with your friends and your family about it. That's how you start impacting change. And that's how you start, organizing and so I'm gonna wrap it up, gone over. Again, love you all. Thank you all for joining us at the Partnership for Southern Equity Just Energy Summit, this virtual experience. We love you all. Be safe. Continue to respect social distancing. Continue to respect COVID. Please, let's still continue to stand in solidarity while we have these global and national protests about just one of the systems of oppression. The criminal justice system. You need to vote your DAs. Don't even get me started. Even if you're not feeling the presidential election, your superior court clerks that decide your juries, your tax commissioners, that make up your property taxes and start the gentrification and just the So you can tie this thing in. You cannot have economic development without political development. They're deciding your business licenses, your mayors, your councils, your county commissioners. Okay, so that's all I have for you. Again, can't stress it enough. Love you all, and let's make a difference.